Hi, I'm Kim Lefebvre with Politichick.tv here in Northern California with Noel Sheppard, Associate Editor of NewsBusters. NewsBusters is committed to exposing liberal media bias. Noel also writes for a contributing writer for Fox News. And so today has been exactly 2 weeks since that election day.
We had an election.
Election night, yeah.
I don't remember that.
So, that's...
You're starting with the bad stuff right off the bat.
And that election left many Republicans angry, confused, discouraged, outraged, saddened.
Yep.
So what happened? What do you think happened?
Well, I think that the most important number from that night was that Romney ended up getting fewer votes than McCain did in 2008. And none of us would have imagined that as being possible going into the election. When you think about 2008, it was the perfect alignment of planets against the Republican Party. Bush was a tremendously unpopular president. The Democrats had taken back both chambers of Congress in the 2006 midterm elections. You had a very, very charismatic Democratic presidential candidate that the media were so enthralled with that they were having orgasms on TV and feeling that was acceptable. And you had a collapsing economy, which the media totally blamed on George W. Bush and Republicans what's interesting, Kim, if the media had been honest about the financial crisis of 2008, the Republicans and Bush would have gotten significantly less blame. Because the reality is that the two pieces of legislation which ushered in the collapse, which ushered in the housing bubble, which ushered in the credit bubble, were the 1999 Financial Services Modernization Act and the 2000 Commodity Futures Modernization Act. Both signed by Bill Clinton, both enacted prior to George W. Bush being inaugurated. The first FSMA basically eliminated Glass-Steagall and eliminated the last vestiges of the separation of power between brokerage firms, banks, and insurance companies. And then what the 2000 Commodity Futures Modernization Act did is it deregulated commodity futures and derivatives. And it was those derivatives, the credit default swaps and the collateralized debt obligations, which allowed banks and lenders to loan at ridiculous levels and to people who didn't qualify. So the reality is it's those two pieces of legislation that were at the heart of the buildup of the credit bubble and the housing bubble and the eventual collapse had nothing to do with George W. Bush. If the media had been honest about that in 2008, rather than just blaming it all on Bush, outcome would have conceivably been a little bit different. So all of the planets and all of the stars and, of course, all of the media conspired against Republicans in 2008. And adding to that, McCain's running mate, a lot of debate about whether she helped him, whether she hurt him. I would probably make the case that with the base she might have helped him, but with moderates and independents, maybe not. So net she might have been lost, tough to tell. But the idea that McCain-Palin, with all of the obstacles that they had against them in 2008, conceivably will end up with, when I say conceivably, all the votes aren't in yet. Right here in our own state, I think there's 2 million some odd votes that haven't been counted. I believe that, maybe even 3 million. So it's conceivable that Romney is going to equal McCain, a little bit less, a little bit more. We're not really sure where it's going to come in. That's absurd. That's absurd because in reality, one can make the case that all of the planets, or some planets, not all of the planets, but some planets aligned for us in this election, the biggest planet being the economy, was clearly against Obama, the unemployment rate, clearly against Obama. The Republican victory, historic victory in the 2010 midterms, clearly set up a wave. I mean, we really should have, as Republicans, been riding a wave And if that wave produces less votes than what McCain-Palin got, and less votes than what John Kerry got in 2004, it's a concern.
Shocking.
Yeah, it's a concern. Why is that? Well, if we look at what Obama did, and I don't think that we should be afraid to look at what Obama did. You know, in sports and business, you look at those either in your sport or in your field that are the most successful, and you try to emulate them. So we should look at what Obama did, and what Obama did tremendously well was he identified the various states. He identified states that he didn't have to campaign in, ours being one of them. Must be nice to not have to worry about California, New York, but that's where we are. So he didn't spend any money here or any time here. Instead, he focused attention on Ohio and Florida and Wisconsin and North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, etc. And they set up really good field operations to be going to colleges, to be going to churches, to be going to community organizations, and identifying new voters to register to get on their team, because they knew that the enthusiasm wasn't at the same level as it was in 2008. They knew that there was a percentage of moderates and independents that had voted for them in 2008, who got caught up in the big wave, but were not going to vote for them again. So what did they do? They identified new voters. They signed them up. They got them out to vote. Republicans don't do that.
We need to do that.
We need to do that, or else we'll never win. Instead, I think that Republicans have been following the Lee Atwater strategy that was done under Reagan, where you find a good candidate, he's got a good message, and then you spend like crazy on television ads and you win. It doesn't work. We've got to be thinking about different strategies, and that's clearly going to decide it for us in the future, is are we going to be able to get out the vote. But the good news for conservatives is this was not the mandate that the media claims. The reality is Obama got fewer votes in 12 than he did in 8. He got fewer electoral votes. He did not win the House. I mean, in 2008, he expanded majorities in the Senate and the House. He expanded a little bit in the Senate, but he didn't win back the House. That's monstrous. You don't get a mandate with a divided government. And he lost governors' mansions. So this isn't the big mandate that the media is claiming by any means. This doesn't allow him to run roughshod over us, hopefully.
So that's the main reason you believe that the Republicans lost, is because we didn't have that ground.
I think so. I'm not sure it was necessarily the candidate. I mean, I'm not sure Abraham Lincoln would have done significantly better. The reality is we had a good candidate. Did he fit my model for conservatism? Maybe not. But this was a very, very attractive, tremendously successful, tremendously bright guy. Who's better? I mean, if a guy like Romney, with all of his qualifications, with all of his success, is somehow not fit to be president of the United States, then who is? I mean, you look at his resume versus Obama's. When Obama first ran, there's no resume for Obama. I mean, yes, he graduated from law school, and he was a community organizer, and he had a tremendously undistinguished career as a state senator, and a tremendously undistinguished career as a U.S. senator. Where's the qualification? Right. By contrast, you've got a guy who saved the Olympics. You've got a guy who started his own business. And you've got a guy who was a governor of Massachusetts. Right. Those are credentials. Right. That's a great resume. So if he's not qualified enough, if we consider him to be a flawed candidate somehow, who's not flawed? But by the way, this is what the media do. There's no such thing as a qualified Republican candidate. They're all flawed somehow. Okay. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton can run for Senate, having never run for U.S. Senate, having never held office in her life, all because she was First Lady. She's qualified to be senator. Strange. But Romney, well, and then Obama, of course, who had a tremendously undistinguished career, he's qualified. Democrats, as far as the media are concerned, are always qualified for whatever they want to be. Republicans are never qualified. They either don't have enough schooling or they don't have enough legislative background. They've never been a governor. There's something that the media are going to say he or she isn't qualified. It's just how we live.
Right.